Generally Famous is proudly brought to you by Trade Depot. Generally famous for saving Kiwis thousands. Call into one of the stores or visit online at tradedepot.co.nz. Kia ora, Aotearoa, and welcome to Generally Famous. I'm Simon Bridges, and every week I talk to generally famous but always interesting guests about life, love, and what makes them tick. Today, Nick Mowbray. In his late 30s, he's already one of New Zealand's most successful entrepreneurs and business people ever. Founding with older brother Matt, Zuru, today one of the largest toy companies in the world, known for its innovation, creativity, and disruption through automation. Nick, welcome.
Hi, Simon. I don't know if I'm famous or interesting, but we'll give it a shot.
Well, there is a generally caveat at the front, so no, you absolutely are. And look, today you're at the top of a multi-billion-dollar set of companies. Toys, consumer goods. I know it's tech and construction. I don't even kind of understand what you're doing there. You're in, I think I'm right to say 30, probably more now actually, because the internet's always a bit late. Global locations. You've got many thousands of employees, but it wasn't always so. And I suppose what I know about you is that, you've got, I've mentioned of your brother Matt. You've got a high profile, I think she's generally famous actually, Sister Anna, and you come off Waikato Dairy Farm. Your parents are Waikato dairy farmers. Was there anything in that was predictive of where you are now?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We were born in Tokoroa, grew up in Tokoroa for a while before we moved north to Cambridge or Karapiro, and we grew up with I think, my mum was a teacher, my dad was an engineer, but Dad was always pushing us to do things from a pretty young age. And he kind of drilled into us almost that, when you're younger, that's the time to have a crack at something yourself and have a go. And if you just start and work really hard at it, eventually you'll crack it. And so I guess that was kind of drilled into us from a pretty young age. And then we were always super competitive. My parents probably always pushed us to be competitive, and we were all really competitive and competed with each other. And so I always say, like most really great entrepreneurs or success stories, most people are genuinely pretty competitive. You have to want to win and fight to win, and I think that was a trait that we all had.
Who'd win in the competitions?
Depends what it was in. We used to have, we had so many competitions.
Are you the most athletic and the sort of, because we have just been talking about you training with Joseph Parker, obviously. I mean, this is all relative, right? But I would suggest, I'm sorry to everyone else in the room here, you were the most buff person in this room.
It's just the tight shirt. No, I'm not sure about that. But we'd have, didn't matter what it was a competition. I remember we used to have like ice block competitions, and you had to try and eat your ice block the slower. So whoever could eat their ice block the slowest.
That's sadistic.
And
that's the sort of sadism that leads to being a billionaire.
Melt to the end. So that was, everything in our family growing up was a competition. Didn't matter what it was.
And what I also know is, so Matt was manufacturing hot air balloons from Coke cans and plastic bags. You were sort of the entrepreneur, right? So he's sort of like the mad professor inventor. You're the entrepreneur, and you're selling them door to door. How old are you when you're doing this?
Yeah, I'd say we're both pretty entrepreneurial for sure. Matt was 12 when he won the New Zealand Science Fair.
Wow.
And Dad was sort of pushing.
What was that with?
Model hot air balloons. So Dad and Matt would sort of experiment and cut up plastic bags and paper canopies and built all these different prototypes, various prototypes, until they sort of made this one with a big plastic bag and wiring and Coke can on the bottom. And you'd put some mess and cotton wool in it. It would fly for about 10 kilometres and you'd chase it. And then we used to make these, Matt would kind of...
He's older than you, right?
Matt's older than me. So I was quite a bit younger, and he'd sort of employ me as the labour. So we'd start sort of making these...
You pay you fair pay?
Yeah, I don't think I got paid at all, to be honest. I think he just sort of roped me into it. I remember... not really being able to do much schoolwork.
That's illegal now, you understand.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. He'd have me winding wire and cutting canopies and putting them in bags and folding instruction sheets. And then, we'd sort of, as I got older, we'd go door-to-door selling sort of all around New Zealand, backpacking around, selling them door-to-door. So those are pretty good lessons, actually. Knocking on a door, you don't know who you're going to get. Trying to sell a flying plastic bag. Yeah. It's not easy, so it teaches you a lot of skills.
So you're confident?
Confident? Yeah,
you've got, like, I know with door-to-door sales of a political kind, I didn't enjoy it, but I told myself I enjoyed it, and now I could just rock up to any door and at some level, act like I'm the long-lost friend of whoever's there.
Yeah, that is the key. I think it's more being able to handle rejection over and over and over again and not let it affect you. So I think like learning that relatively early on, because again, when you're trying to sell a flying plastic bag, it's not easy. No. So you face a lot of rejection, which isn't always that fun, but you had to keep getting back up and knocking on another door.
It's like psychology, eating the ice block slower than anyone and taking rejection door to door.
Pretty much, yeah.
And what sort of, you reckon, motivated you then? You think about you and your bro. Was it, I mean, was it money? Or do you think it was that and, I don't know, a desire to create? Or what do you reckon?
I think there's a desire to not fail, first of all. It's that paranoia, like we don't want to fail. Like you have to do something right with your time. So if you've got to do something with your time, you may as well try and do it really, really well. And so it was more that, almost that fear of failure, but also that competitive drive to try and do something and probably almost to win, right? Like we wanted to attack something and try and work out how to figure it out. And to be honest, that took us a long time. It's hard to put into words just how naive we were in those sort of early years and how bad we were. I mean, we were bad. We had no idea what we were doing. So, and there's just so many great examples of that, which you look back on, it's almost embarrassing how sort of bad we were. But we always kind of had that thought pattern that if we continually improve and that improvement compounds, eventually we'll get there. And I always have the saying, you either win or you learn, right? You never really lose. You win or you learn. So we did a lot of learning in those early years.
Yeah. You and I share one thing, and maybe possibly more than one thing, but we share one thing at least. Right? Well, there is that. And charismatic.
Mine's a bit ginger.
Charisma, good looks. That's right. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. And that is that we both started law degrees. I finished mine. You are a law dropout, age 18. You know, do you regret that there's not Mowbray and Mowbray Sons in Hamilton East Law or something right now?
Do you know what? I was at Wellington. I was staying in Unicom. And Unicom was at the bottom of that big hill to get up to Vic at the top there. And I used to look at that hill every day and I thought, not today, hill, not today. And I thought, I'm not going to walk that. So it was more sort of a
with those law texts in your bag.
Exactly. I don't want to walk that hill each day. So no, to be honest, I just got sick of the reading. It was too. I'm a little ADHD, so trying to focus on something that I'm not that interested in became difficult. So after a year, I didn't actually make it into second year. That's the truth. I think you had to average like 70-something odd%, and I fell just short. And then I didn't make it. Then my brother, I was sort of helping him out in the summer holidays. We had a little it was like a little barn in Tokoroa on our dairy farm. We were making these hot air balloons, so I'd make them in the summer holidays. And then I found out I didn't make it into second year, so we said, why don't we go to China? And I was sort of, well, nothing else to do, so yeah, let's go to China. And then I actually did end up making it into law because obviously other people dropped out and opened up some positions. But at that stage, I'd already made the decision to move to China.
I'm sure there's been 1,000 big little decisions, probably more, but in a sense, that decision, you're 18, I'm not going to go that tried and true path of, getting a law degree and being safe and middle class or whatever it is. I'm going to drop out of that and I'm going to go to China. It's almost, looking back, is that kind of like one of your biggest years ever in a fateful sense? In a fateful sense,
yeah. There's always forks in the road, right, in life. And so probably making that decision has been, probably one of the greatest decisions we ever made. Like being at China at that time as well, almost, 18 years ago now. It was just kind of going through this evolution of being a manufacturing economy to actually sort of being an innovator as well, and incredible talent starting to come through. So we caught it at the right sort of stage on the curve, and that's just been.
And it was you and Matt both went.
Correct. Yep.
You were over there, young guys. I mean, it was risky.
My cousin also came over,
right.
Simon. We were first living in a little apartment, $20 a month, 8th floor, no lift. Then we lived in we had a little place called Function Dowdale. It was this little tin shed down by a river. And we used to have Simon welded our production line. We probably had about eight factory workers making these frisbees and hot air balloons. And there was a toilet, 2 holes in the ground. And we had a lady, an old Chinese lady, and she'd have a big wok on the ground, just a little gas stove and a rice cooker. And she'd put some vegetables in that wok and some rice, and we pretty much ate on like 2 RMB a day, or like 30 or 40 cents a day. So that's kind of how we survived. And she had that wok sort of sitting right outside these little sort of hole in the ground toilets, and it was never that appetizing, but that's how we lived. We basically were wasting away. And there were no other Westerners around. And then Matt still...
No gingers.
No, none of those, 100% none of those. But Matt lived for 10 years in as we...
This is Guangzhou, right?
Yeah, we progressively moved up factories. So then we moved to Huadu, and then we moved sort of to bigger and bigger facilities. But Matt lived in our first sort of third factory, it would have been, for almost 10 years. Had a little room in the factory, so...
Not glamorous.
At all. It was a lot of sacrifice. I'm always interested in this because my parents... one has passed away. Sadly, he won't be listening. I'm not sure my mum will be listening either, to be honest. I feel like at key junctures, they always gave me the wrong advice. I'm interested, when you went to China with Matt, what was your parents' viewpoint on that? My mum hated it. My dad, I think, was for it. My dad was for sure for it. But mum was just like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? And I got myself in all sorts of trouble in that first year in China. Being a young, naive, Kiwi. Won't go into it today, but she was going grey pretty quick. Right.
It sounds, vaguely, I have sort of visions of Hangover movie or something. No,
yeah.
You're not? No?
There was some bad, I ended up in a Chinese jail, a Hong Kong jail. I had some interesting experiences in those first few years.
Well, can you laugh about them now?
100%. Every bad decision leads to a good story, so as long as you remember that.
We'll come back to that. And so, I think the other thing that is interesting about all of this is, I know, again, so Walmart, the multinational mega US stores, they kind of want to see your showroom. You don't have one. You're going door to door to try and find one. At this time, roughly, you're living under or sleeping on a mattress under a table.
Yeah, well, So I used to sit in China in our little factory and try and sell our first couple of products. We had this night frisbee and this hot air balloon. Hot air balloon didn't meet any regulatory requirements globally, so that ruled that out. So we had this night frisbee that we'd copied. And I used to ring buyers day in, day out, just get this list of retailers around the world and email them relentlessly, and had a big bottle of Coke sitting beside me, and I'd do it all night, all day, and email and ring them. And then very occasionally, I remember emailing Walmart for probably 4 or 5 months, never getting any replies. So I'd keep ringing them at probably about 12 to 1 a.m. my time to make the right time in Bentonville work. And then one day I was answering. I was a guy called Ryan Halford, never forget his name. And then I had no idea what to say. I was sort of like, we're the small toy company, and I was wondering if I could come and meet you. And he said, well, do you have a showroom in Hong Kong? We had no idea how the industry worked, and that it kind of revolved around these showrooms in Hong Kong, and buyers from all over the world come and visit these showrooms multiple times a year. So I said to him, yes, I have a showroom. I'll get you that address.
Liar!
I did. I said, I'll get you the showroom address in the next couple of days.
Ryan was fibbed too.
He was, yeah. So then I was on a train, concessionary pass, of course, like child's pass, to save that $2 New Zealand dollars, down to Hong Kong.
Make business is a dirty, rotten thing.
Yeah. And then so I went around all these toy companies, sort of knocking on doors. I sort of found where the toy companies were based in an area in Hong Kong called Tim Sha Tsui. So I was knocking on all these doors, sort of pitching to these toy companies, hey, can I borrow some showroom space? If I'm going to bring the Walmart buyer in, and maybe you can see your products, or if I sell something, I'll pay you a commission. And everyone kind of laughed at me and sent me on my way. And then I found this building called South Sea Centre on the first floor. It had these little tiny glass cubicles, maybe 3 or 4 square meters in size. And you could rent these things out, but they were expensive. At the time for us, I think it was $2,500 US a month or something. So that was a lot of money at the time. But I thought I had no choice. So we rented one of these little sort of cubicles, and then I lived in it as well. So I went and sort of got this old table. I found some old shelving that someone had thrown away, put them in our showroom. Had this mattress, and I'd wind the mattress up. I had a little fridge. I'd hide the mattress behind the fridge each day, and then there was the only place on the floor to put it was sort of under the table. So I'd actually sleep in that showroom, wash in the public toilets. And I think my second ever meeting was the buyer from Cayman, Australia, and she ended up coming at 9 a.m. instead of 10 a.m. and I was still asleep sort of under the table, and I could see her feet, you could see under the door about half a metre from my head on the ground.
And you grabbed your leg.
And I just sat there. I was like, shit. This was my second or third ever meeting. I was like, oh no. So I had to stay dead silent. And then I waited till 10 o'clock, or 10:15, and I emailed her and said, hey, weren't you meant to come for that 10 o'clock meeting? She said, I thought it was 9. So we rescheduled. But yeah, there was all sorts of pretty funny experiences. I remember Walmart Canada came in, and the guy was so shocked that he'd given me the meeting in this little tiny cupboard with 2 products, that he basically came in, asked for the quotes. I'd filled out something wrong on the quote form, threw the quotes at me, and stormed out after about 3 minutes. I think he was embarrassed that it even turned up to our showroom. So Yeah, we used to do some pretty crazy things to break in. I remember like crashing. It was Dick's Sporting Goods. I'd recognise the buyer. He was at dinner on a terrace in Hong Kong. So I saw him. I went and got a rubbish bag, filled it with some of our products from our showroom, went down and crashed his dinner with his suppliers.
Shameless.
Very, very shameless. Never managed to get in there for a few years. But we used to do all sorts of things. One of our buyers, and I always remember those first ones, was a lady from a department store in the US called Jen Sarah Coles. Spelled with a K, not like the Australian version. About 800 stores. I used to email her every day, and one day I got an email back from her, all in capitals, that said, "Hey Nick, can you please refrain from emailing me every single day? I do not have time for your daily emails." And I'd always go back, "Hey, sorry, Jen, but our product's really great." Eventually, she just said to me, "Send sample." Two words. That's all I got. Sent the sample. She ordered like 20,000 units of this night frisbee, and then we got sued on it, and she got sued, and they got pulled into the lawsuit for 3 years. So
what was that about? What was wrong with your frisbee?
We'd copied it. We didn't know what IP was. When I said earlier we were really naive, we had no idea what we were doing. So we just found this product, and we were like, "This is awesome." As it turned out, it had about 5 patents on it, and all sorts of things. And
that pesky patent law.
Yeah, and then
if only you'd done the law degree, Nick.
You know what? I learned how to be a lawyer after that, because we had no money to defend ourselves. And this company was called Night Eyes out of Colorado, Boulder, Colorado. So I went there. I went to all these law firms. They're like, "That'll cost you $1.5 million, $2 million to defend." Of course, we had about $30,000 to our name. So then we found this lawyer, and I managed to convince him that we were going to win it. And I would do all the work, and my sister would do all the work. We'd write all the legal case, and we just needed him to put his name to it. And so he agreed. And so he managed to do it, but he got disbarred after this, by the way.
You and law is not, I feel like this is not a...
Yeah, but we were desperate, right? We had to defend this case, and we had no money to do it, so we had to kind of be creative. So I remember just Googling everything and writing, doing all our documents, and then getting this lawyer to put his name to them. And we ended up settling after about 3 years. But yeah, that happened when I actually went to New York Toy Show. I stayed in a hostel in New York, and I'd sold our night frisbee and another product we'd copied called Money Gobbler. It was like money bank, put the money in the mouth, went down to the stomach. We didn't know about IP, so I turned up at New York Toy Show, had them on this booth. Within the first morning, this guy comes storming onto the booth to our distributor, which was from Night Eyes, saying, "You've knocked off the frisbee, all our patents, da da da." So our distributor Dave said, "Hey Nick, you need to take the frisbee off the booth." It's sort of the first morning of the show, so take the frisbee off the booth. And I'm like, "Well, I'll sell the Money Gobbler, right? Let's get into it. Let's sell the Money Gobbler." I thought the first guy, then this lady comes onto the booth about an hour later. Her whole business for 20 years is making these animal money banks, and we've just completely ripped it. So she's storming, and she just goes, it just loses the plot. And so our distributor is like, "Nick, what is going on? What are these products?" So it made me take that one off the booth as well. So before the first morning of New York Toy Show we'd even got through it, I had to take both our products off the booth. So I went back to China, said to my brother, "You heard of this whole this IP patent thing? I think we need to start coming up with some of our own ideas." So yeah, there were all these wild stories in the early days. We were bad. We had no idea what we were doing.
And then there is a moral to this, which is that, look, it's not glamorous. It's a grind. There's crazy twists and turns. You're sleeping in a mattress. You're getting abused by people. They're not replying your emails. So it's a long, hard path from that to where you are right now.
Yeah, 100%.
You still have the hunger?
Yeah, every day, yeah. I probably work harder now than I did way back when. Almost. No, maybe not. Probably the same. It doesn't really stop. But yeah, I remember the first couple of years, me and Matt, we celebrated Christmas at McDonald's because we wouldn't spend the equivalent of $3 on a Big Mac. And I used to play this trick at McDonald's. I used to eat half my fries, then go back up and say, "You didn't fill my fries," just so I could get some fries back. We were desperate.
My bloody son, I won't say which one does that. That's not what. Well, I can say.
I don't recommend it.
Now he's going to say, "Well, it's okay. Nick Mowbray did that," right?
But I look back on that stuff and I think, man, we really lived on. Everyone's like, "We really live on a couple of dollars or $1 a day," and I'm like, "Yeah, we really lived on a couple of dollars a day for years, years and years and years and years."
And today, MBR's got your family about $3 billion or something. I reckon that'd be conservative. You won't tell me, don't worry. But what I am interested in is, how would you describe how you got from that, living on the bones of your ass, to one of the best toy companies, and much broader than that, I know, but one of the best toy companies in the world?
I think it was that paranoia of failure, and then that drive to succeed, to just get up every day and scrap and fight and try and work out how to win. And then, eventually we weren't very good at developing toys, but eventually we started to develop, a few things that we thought would work. Most of them wouldn't. We managed to make a profitable business by just selling enough product to new customers. We'd never get a reorder because it wasn't successful, and then doing the next one, the next one, the next one. And then eventually I started like signing up a bunch of products from US companies that were only selling in the US, but they made good products, and I was distributing them sort of globally. So I'd do deals with them, and they were good products. So that sort of opened up all this distribution in sort of other countries. And then from there, we started to get like the odd hit. We had Zeebies, and we had a product called Schnooks. Then we had RoboFish, which sort of took us to 100 million. So it was sort of step by step. It was an evolution. And then, before we know it now, we're in, the top few toy companies in the world. And yeah, we just got better and better and better. I think people underestimate, there's that great saying, right, that you sort of overestimate what you can do in the short term and underestimate what you do in the long term. Yes. And I think there's nothing truer. Like, we have this relentless mindset around compounding continuous improvement. And we say always, we suck now compared to where we will be in the future. So we want to look back on today in a year and say, we weren't even good then. So it's this mindset of never flatlining. And I think that compounding improvement happens to us every year, and we almost get double or 3 times as good year on year on year on year. And so suddenly you become
exponential.
You become the best in the world at what you do, and it's actually in a relatively short period of time. And I think that kind of sums up our journey.
You've given me a lot already, but I mean, let me ask you this anyway. And if you want to say, well, I've already told you, but at a really high level, what have you learned over the last 15 years, couple of decades on all this stuff?
I think a lot of lessons. I think a lot of lessons that I start to incorporate into what we call our Zuru DNA, whether it's, creating strong frameworks for the teams with which we win, with which we play in. It's, framework things around talent density. We have a thing in our DNA called brains trust, which doesn't allow anyone to flat line. We actually have layer and layer within the Zuru DNA. I could probably go on for ages about our Zuru DNA, actually.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm not trying to be controversial, but it's interesting what you've said. I mean, do you think, when you look and you tell us that journey, that's remarkable, right? And you've been there on your bones, your back's been the mattress and all of that. But and I know, for example, I think you've just won a court case in the US, a significant one. Have you had to fly or sail close to the wind to get where you are?
I don't think we've had to sail close to the wind. I think it is down to like pure perseverance. It's the people that can stick it out the longest and almost sacrifice the most for the longest and continuously get better that I think eventually succeed. And I think just most people aren't willing to put in the amount of years of persistence and keep getting up to get there. And that's why so few people probably end up succeeding. So I think it's really that ability to keep getting knocked down and just keep getting back up and keep moving forward. But just as importantly, to keep learning from all the things you do wrong and improving them and relentlessly getting insights, right? And using those insights to
what would your advice be to the next Nick Mowbray, a young guy or girl sitting in Te Awamutu or Invercargill, wherever they are?
Think big. I think at scale. I think that's maybe a thing that most New Zealand companies or people don't necessarily do. You've got to think big because everyone at the end of that are just people and everything's about relationships. So it's almost as easy to work at scale, to go out and win a Walmart as it is maybe the corner store, right? Yeah. So at the end of the day, like I always say, think big, go after something at scale, persist, fight hard, like work hard to get there, work out how you're going to win. I love the saying from Sun Tzu, the victorious strategist has won the fight before he enters the arena. The losing strategist fights first and looks for victory later. So really line up from A to Z how you're going to win, like have a thesis, and then go after it. Just you got to start, right? You got to start and you got to keep fighting and you got to get every day and fight and scrap, and eventually you work it out. Eventually you get to the top of the hill. And so I think that was sort of the, I think, if I look back, that would be the thing that I realized is that if you just start in something and you have a mindset that I'm going to improve and I'm going to work it out, eventually you do. If you have that mindset, most people get a little nervous to maybe start and then fight it for long enough, or they get too maybe personally connected to their idea rather than really like adapting and getting insights and evolving and improving along the way. I'd also say probably like look after your health a bit more. We were pretty brutal. We didn't really look after ourselves very well over probably a decade. So I think without your health, you don't have much. So I think that's kind of important as well.
Well, the warm weather has finally arrived, and that means outdoor living, looking for cooler indoors, and breaking out possibly the tool belt for all your DIY and home improvement projects. Yep, you might be one of the many thousands of Kiwis thinking about those home improvement jobs. Trade Depot is your one-stop shop, whatever you're up to, with over 4,500, that's right, 4,500 quality home improvement projects across bathrooms, kitchens, appliances, and much, much more. Trade Depot has you sorted for any project. And most appliances have a 2-year warranty. Trade Depot is 100% New Zealand owned. They understand where you're coming from. They believe you don't have to pay a premium for good quality products. But neither should you throw your money away on low quality items. And the more you spend, the more you save. Get 4% off orders over $2,500 and up to 8% off orders over $8,000. T's and C's apply. Get more bang for your buck with low prices always at Trade Depot. Check out tradedepot.co.nz or call into one of their 3 stores, Auckland, Christchurch and the new superstore in Hamilton near the airport. Look, enough of that non-serious stuff. I want to ask you something that really matters. Bunch of balloons, X-Shot, Rainbow Corns, Robo Alive, Smashes, S-Surprise. Which is your favourite toy?
Ooh, what really matters? What's favourite toy? Oh, man, that's a tough one.
It's like children. You can't choose.
Our biggest brand is 5 Surprise and Mini Brands.
What's 5 Surprise?
5 Surprise.
Did I say yes, Surprise? Shows how much I know.
Yeah, 5 Surprise is 3 of the top 10 toys in the world currently. And they're perfect little miniatures of big brands. I think we've shipped 1 billion of them in the last 24 months. So it's a significant property. But what's my favourite? I probably can't go past X-Shot. And just what we're building there and the innovation we're like driving in the blaster category.
Have you ever used it on your part, Jamie? I mean, you're chasing around to the, give her a good smash in the face of, from the X-Shot.
Yeah, there's a few blasters always floating around the office as well. So,
and look, for the uninitiated, what is the X-Shot?
X-Shot's our dart blaster brand.
And I should emphasise, they don't hurt or anything.
No. Yeah, no, absolutely
Arlie
not.
Williams, your sort of brother-in-law or whatever is out on the super yacht. Are you chasing around one of those, smashing it out on him?
Yeah, he's too easy to beat, so,
And of course, look, Kim Kardashian, Bieber, these people, are you mixing with the rich and you told me you're not generally famous, but are you mixing with them? Are you shamelessly, as you have in the past, handing them X-Shots and pulling out the smartphone to capture this?
Yeah, no. I mean, look, I'm relatively lucky now, I guess, in the position we're in that we can be connected to lots of interesting people. So yeah, I get to spend a lot of time with people like the Kardashians or. Just a number of people.
Do you like them? Or are they?
Do you know what? Like, Chris is amazing. Great person. Chloe's amazing. Actually, they're all really great. They're genuinely nice people. Spent a bit of time this year with Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively at their place in New York. You know what? Lovely, genuine people. That might be a surprise to everyone, right? But like that they turn it on with the cameras. Like genuinely, there's no nicer person than Chris Jenner that I couldn't speak highly enough. My experience, people who are top in their game, if you want to put it that way, generally are, great people. Right? There's the odd exception, but fundamentally that's sort of. So. I think that's part of getting to where they got to, right? You can still be competitive and you can still push hard and you can compete hard, but I think you still need to be a good person. And just on the toys, because this really does matter, what's the, I mean, as we'd say in Te Reo, what's the kaupapa, what's the ethos? What is your difference here around toys from, say, a Lego or a Hasbro? Or what's going on? Is it in your production method? Or is it in the thought that goes into the kind of toy and thinking like a child? Or what's going on? There's layers to it. I think how we set up our business, it gives us huge advantages. Most of our competitors outsource all their production to third-party contract manufacturers. We build a lot of our own facilities ourselves, but we go a step further and we automate a lot of our production. So we have 2 big offices in India, one in Calcutta, one in Ahmedabad, which builds all the software for a lot of our automation. And we have a facility in China with a few hundred automation engineers. And we build a new automated process on average every 2 weeks. That we're automating a process within a production process. So that's a huge advantage for us, not just being vertical, but then automating a lot of our production. And then, of course, ideas. Ideas and innovation are what kind of drive the toy industry. So if you can win on ideas, on innovation, you can win on production, and then you can win on a new platform. We're the number one toy company in the world on TikTok. TikTok is, if you look at America, 200 million Americans now spend more time on TikTok than any other media platform. So being at the cutting edge of new platform and how we drive data-driven marketing, we do no traditional marketing now in our toy business. A couple of countries are an exception, Spain, Italy. Everything is digitally driven. So we always try and stay, I guess, one step ahead. Sometimes the bigger companies are a little bit more cumbersome and less agile to move.
At a level then, is what you're saying to me that at your heart, you're actually a tech and innovation business?
I think if you put that across our whole business, at our heart, that's what we are. We produce products, yes, but we are a tech and innovation business. Some of the factories and facilities we build, and until you see them, it's hard to almost comprehend the level of complexity in building a product without people. Even take something like Bunch of Balloons that's built, completely by robots. It's difficult. There's all these like straws and tubes and little O-rings over every one and balloons put over them. To do that by robot at scale is not easy. So that technology and all the technology and automation we build is sort of at our heart, and that's across Zuru Tech. We're building buildings on production lines. We have over, I think, almost 400, almost 500 people now on Zuru Tech across software and automation and engineering. All the way across our consumer goods business. We just built a 60,000 square metre nappy facility. We just finished our personal care facility. We're just building a state-of-the-art laundry facility. And at our heart is that manufacturing and automation.
In your videos that I've seen, it's kind of like Silicon Valley-esque. We've got these big open plan places. There's automation. There's, young millennials who look kind of cool and hip wandering around. You have said, I think, something like this, that you aspire to be up there like an Apple, a Tesla, a Google. Have I got that right?
Yeah, and 100%. I think that's I think we want to wrap our company in like a purpose, like going forward. And it's toys, consumer goods. Yes, they're big categories. Yes, we can create. We've created a really big business around them. Yes, that's great. We're attaching a lot of our consumer goods brands to have a purpose connected to them as well. And I think that's really important going forward is purpose-led businesses and purpose-led brands. But I think purpose is going to become more important. So they're probably all a stepping block to solving what we see as one of the biggest problems in the world and one of the biggest categories, which is making building more affordable, housing more affordable. How do we make it 10 times more affordable? Because it's so out of reach now of such a large percentage of the world. And shelter is, of course, pretty important, right? So how do we, all of these things are almost stepping stones to us solving a bigger problem and wrapping Zuru in a bigger purpose, right, long term. So, I think that's whilst I say like putting our name next to those names, I think I also want to make sure, or we want to make sure that we wrap Zuru in a bigger purpose, which is solving actually a big problem. And by solving that big problem, hopefully it's going to get us to those type of levels.
You're clearly in saying that, and I don't mean this as a negative thing, but you're dissatisfied, you're not content. Are you happy?
Do you know what I think? I think that's a trait of like any good entrepreneur. You always have to be kind of constructively dissatisfied. And it's not so much about, it's more about the process and the challenge and the competition of it and the thesis. You've got to have a thesis on something and then you go and execute that thesis and you see if you're right. So there's almost an element of not knowing, right, and wanting to be proved correct or in many cases incorrect, right, and that's kind of like the fun of the game. It's a hobby. Like for us, it's a hobby as well. Like it's a passion, it's a love. That drive is part of it. So, for us, we do it to sort of take the next step up and to solve the next bigger and bigger and bigger problem. So, yeah, I think we're always constructively unsatisfied. I think that's like a trait of any kind of good entrepreneur. You want to keep pushing forward. And part of that's paranoia of going backwards, and so naturally you try and continue to push forward as well. But yeah, I'm happy. I love doing what I do. I'll do it forever. I don't think I'll ever retire. This is what I love doing. When I'm not doing it, when I was sort of sick and I came home from Hong Kong to New Zealand for surgery, and I had to do nothing, and I hated it. It was the worst possible thing. That's when we started Zuru Edge, which is sort of the consumer goods side, because literally doing nothing and having nothing to sort of go after or no kind of challenge, my brain just sort of just doesn't work like that. I need to sort of be doing something, I guess.
Because you could, I mentioned your wealth, your absolutely one of the wealthiest New Zealanders. You're wealthy in international terms. You know, you got the .com mansion, all these things going on. You could buy a couple of islands, rent out some motels to the government, and sit back and do nothing.
Yeah, I couldn't think of anything worse.
Not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
What does wealth mean to you?
What does wealth mean to me? I think it means time. It gives you time to do what you want and how you want to do it, and it allows you to maybe go and solve bigger problems. Like wealth allows you, it gives you the opportunity, right, to do things that, you know, a lot of people can't do. So it gives us this opportunity to go after and try and solve. You know, we're investing a lot in Zuru tech, right? We've got, you know, like I said, like, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people working on it, and it is a big ambition. No one's ever built something like this where you have a fully customized input and it's fully automated output. There's no factory that's done this at scale in any category in the world. So we're trying to solve a really big problem, and I think wealth allows you to go and try and solve those big problems. So I think, you know, it's a privilege to be able to actually take on bigger and bigger challenges because of the wealth we've generated.
Because am I right? You're not big on borrowing and so on. If we think about it, I think I'm right to say your old man lent you 20 grand. I hope you paid him back with interest.
I don't think so.
Is he still in the Toyota Corolla or the Hilux, or is he
not.
a little bit better than that these days?
He's most definitely not. Like, look, we never borrowed. We've never been to a bank. You know, we didn't even really realize. I don't think we could have got a bank loan in those early days. And we were in China. We didn't really even think about it. But you know, when we've made our first million, we had a month where we actually lost like, I think, 200 grand, and we sat down and we were like, holy shit, we lost, you know, all this money. Like, from this day forth, we're never going to lose a cent. And you know, we just cognitively said, you know, if we're ever going to lose money, we'll live on nothing. We'll do whatever it takes to make sure we, you know, continuously profitable. And ever since that day, like 17 years ago, right, we've just continued to sort of build and be more and more profitable. So it was just a decision. So we've never had loans, never gone to banks, nothing like that.
My old man, speaking of old men, he used to say money isn't everything, but it sure does help. And I mean, you've mentioned you know, having to come back and I think have an operation, and you've also told us, you know, you would have looked after your health more, you know, going back this period of time, you know, you're going at it, and now, you know, I can tell you're a really healthy guy. You've suffered Crohn's disease. I mean, tell me about that, and I mean, how you've got through that.
Yeah, sure. You know what? It's like one of those things that sneaks up on you in a way. You don't actually know how sick you are until maybe I look back on it now and I think, wow, that's crazy, because I was super fit and healthy till I was about maybe 26, 27. And then I kind of started to get unwell, but I was fine. I'd just like keep pushing through. I was on a bunch of drugs. And then probably when I had like 30, 31, I went downhill quickly to the point where I lost all my hair, didn't have a hair on my body. I was down to like 66, 67 kgs. Wow. I looked like I'd come out of a death camp, to be honest. And I was, you know, seriously unwell. I got so much Crohn's kind of arthritis in my joints that I could barely get out of bed some days. I couldn't walk. So it was like, on reflection, it almost feels like a time in my life that I remember it, but you kind of try and block it out now almost. So it was for sort of, I don't know, probably 3 years there, I was suffering pretty bad, to the point where I had to sort of come home to New Zealand. And I didn't realise, I knew I was super sick, but on reflection, I look back at the photos and it's quite scary, actually. And so I had to get surgery. I had my whole large bowel removed. So the whole thing, basically. And when they were taking it out, sort of coming out in bits and crumbling, and they had to add an extra surgery. And so I did over 3 surgeries. And yes, I no longer have a large bowel, which sounds kind of strange, but they make a new one out of your small bowel. It's amazing what modern medicine can do. And literally overnight, I became. It's incredible, like the sort of the transformation. But I was seriously unwell. I don't know if I had have kept on that road, how long I would have lasted. Do
you think? I mean, it clearly physically changed you, and you've described that. Do you think it changed you in other ways? I mean, up here in your head.
Do you know what? I'd like to think it should have changed me more. I always say like that. It's hard to switch off the drive, and so, you know, even when I was really sick, I started Zuru Edge, and I hired a bunch of kind of grads from Waikato University, most of which are all still with us today, and they're all incredible. and I sort of made them drop out of university, most of them. And I was sort of doing meetings from my bedroom, right, on the days I couldn't get out of bed because of the arthritis in my joints, and I was so sick. But I would sort of that drive to still keep doing something almost overrode like my sickness. And so I kind of think, today, that period of my life, I almost block it out, which is a dangerous thing because now I'm back to working really hard and probably not looking after myself as well as I should. I definitely try to now. I keep telling myself every day or every week to do something or do many things that are helping out my health. But yeah, I feel like I probably should reflect on it more actually. But I'm not very good at it.
Yeah, I empathise. I know the feeling level, and I suppose some would say a leopard can't change their spots, but maybe we got to try and kind of do that sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah.
You spend, if we think about you and your wonderful partner Jamie, you spend quite a lot of time, I'm right to say, in the US, internationally. I mean, if we think about the culture over there and the business way, and you contrast it with New Zealand, do you wish New Zealand had a bit more of the kind of can-do US sort of way of doing things, or what's your shtick on that?
I feel like we're not as ambitious as maybe we should be. I feel like we think it's harder than maybe it actually is, and I come back to that point that everyone's human. So if you can work out the problems you're solving for, and you can frame that at scale to customers at scale, then you can often go and win at scale. And it's not necessarily as hard as everyone thinks. It is hard, don't get me wrong. You have to still work at it for a long period of time, and it's difficult.
Really, what you're saying, a lot of it's mind over matter.
I think it's mind over matter. I think it's like ambition. And if you think big enough and you think at scale and you go after it and you're really determined to get there and win, eventually you will. And I just feel like maybe we're not as necessarily culturally as ambitious. Maybe it's just part of our culture, right? As well.
Because I take it, it sounds a bit kind of twee or cliche or something. You love New Zealand. Do you sense of yourself as a proud New Zealander?
100%.
You're outspoken though, and by the way, I like that, right? So I'm not
Depends.
at all.
I was a little outspoken in COVID.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that to you. I mean, look, there was, and on LinkedIn, you've been a bit quiet lately. It's a bit commercial, but actually, you've had some what I would call kind of, let's say, quasi-political posts around highly critical of multinationals, for example, making big bucks and not paying the COVID subsidy back. At times, really critical of the government. It was a piece, I think, at the start of this year. NZ deserves better than this in terms of the government's mediocrity and so on. I mean, tell me what you really think.
Yeah. Look, the whole COVID piece, I just feel like, if I look back on it, right, I think I did a piece at the end of 2020. I just felt, I'm not 100% sure, like the macroeconomic understanding maybe at a government level all the time, and I felt like cutting our interest rates to 0.25% and printing $70 billion, or was it 25% of our GDP in that period when we were really unaffected by COVID for the best part of 2 years, wasn't that? I just thought that was a huge mistake, because I kind of looked at it in practical terms and I said, okay, we're going to lose tourism in New Zealand, but we're COVID free. But there's a net to tourism because people aren't leaving the country and going out of the country, right? So maybe call it $10 billion we lose there, and we're going to lose international education. So maybe the shortfall is like $12 or $13 billion, right, that we need to maybe inject into the economy to be at balance. But then on top of that, cutting interest rates to almost zero, in my mind, is almost criminal, right? Because it's obviously going to fuel massive inflation and massive asset inflation. And we're going to see the problems now, and we're really reactionary. But when the facts keep changing, you kind of got to change your approach, and we're always going to pay for that on the backside. And so when I wrote that article, I was looking there and I was kind of feeling like a little bit angry about it at the time, right? Like, why are we doing this? It doesn't make sense. Like, we are in a different position to every country in the world. We've been COVID free for so long. We don't need to do this. And I remember Grant Robertson coming out saying we're going to pump into the economy unprecedented stimulus on a per capita basis. And he said that, and I thought, that's really not a smart thing to say at the time. So I think I was just frustrated by it, and now we're being really reactionary the other way. We have this tendency just to react to the moment without thinking about the lag. So now we're throwing interest rates right up the other way and going, oh, we've still got inflation today. But actually there's a massive lag to all of this, right? So we're now going to ruin lots of people, lots of families on this backside, right? As their mortgages come off as well. So I just feel like on both sides...
gone too far each way.
Exactly. Right? We keep going too far each way. And I thought it was relatively obvious at the time. And that's probably why I was a little bit outspoken on it, because I just felt like there was a fundamental misunderstanding of things at almost a macro level.
And so as an incredibly travelled Kiwi, and you look at our little country at the bottom of the world, pessimist, not sure, optimist.
I think I'm always an optimist. I think I'd like to think I'm always an optimist. There's like a little bit of pessimism maybe in there. I think we're definitely, I mean, look, there's no question we're running into like a tough period the next 24 months. We're already seeing leading edge kind of consumer demand coming off in the US, big tech companies, right, starting to lay off people. Things can go the other way really quickly as well. And so I think, over the next 12 months, it's going to be economically tough. I don't think there's any avoiding that, right? When so many more fixed mortgages come off and onto these new rates, people are just going to have less money to spend. And there's going to be tougher times, and companies are going to have tougher times as well. So, at the end of the day, right, the only way to increase prosperity for everyone is to increase productivity on a per person or a per capita basis. So we have to think in productivity terms, and we're probably going to have to dig deep a little bit, right, like as a country over the next couple of years, because we've probably dug ourselves into a bit of a hole. We were always going to have to dig ourselves a certain level of hole over COVID. I think we dug a far too deep a hole. And now we're going to have to dig our way out, and that means we're going to have to work hard, right, to lift productivity on a per capita basis.
What about you personally? You've told me you're going to, well, I'm paraphrasing, but die with your boots on, going at it in a sense till the end. I mean, what about personally? How do you, when you look back, when you're, let's be aspirational here, let's be an optimist, 107, because someone on Silicon Valley's come up with some sort of long-aging serum that maybe you will have helped fund. How do you see your future, and how do you want to look back on?
I'll tell you what, first of all, I'll be pretty happy if I made it to 3 digits, bring up a ton. That would surprise me, but that would be great. Look, I think if we can solve bigger and bigger problems for the world, if we can actually be a big contributing factor to solving big kind of macro level issues, I think that would be something we could be proud of, and I think that's what we're trying to work towards. Everything's a stepping stone, right? As I said earlier, so everything is a stepping stone towards trying to solve potentially bigger and bigger problems. And I think, like I said earlier, the more purpose-led businesses become over time, I think that's going to be good for the world as well.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up and ask you questions I ask every guest. We call this section General Knowledge. What single object would you say from your house? Or I'm going to say houses.
Fair enough. Oh, my golf clubs.
What are they?
Just some Titleist golf. Nothing too fancy.
Are you any good?
Nah, I'm okay. You know what? Golf is the most frustrating game in the world. It's the biggest time suck in the world, but it's a challenge that you can never beat, right? So you keep trying, and you seem to somehow keep trying and get worse. So I don't get the game, but I love it and I hate it.
Ruins a good walk, as I think Winston Churchill or someone like
really
that
does.
once said. What's the best night out you've ever had? And look, give me some famous people. Surely there was Kim Kardashian on one side, and I don't know.
I've had a few good nights out of my time. I don't know if I can pin it on one. Oh man, yeah. There's been some good nights. I don't think I can pin you down one, to be honest. I'll come back to you.
Fair enough. What's the best advice given to you, and who gave it?
Do you know what? It was probably yesterday, and I've probably used it today. It's wrap your business in a bigger purpose. I think that's really good advice, right? Wrap yourself in a bigger purpose.
Do you have a sense of that purpose?
Behind. I think I do have a sense of that purpose, but I got that advice from Greg Foran. I was talking to him yesterday, and he was just saying, wrap your business and yourself in a bigger purpose, and that's something that people get behind. And
I hope when he was at Walmart, he helped buy the Zuru toys.
Yeah, no, he's great.
Nick, thanks so much for being on. It's been great to talk with you about all of these things. I feel like the moral is, when you're 7, learn to be the last guy licking the the icicle. Or what do we call it? Ice pop. What do we call these?
The ice pop.
Popsicle.
The ice pop.
And you never know, you might grow up to be a billionaire. You've been listening to Generally Famous. There's a new episode every Wednesday. You can listen to them all at stuff.co.nz/generallyfamous or wherever you get your podcasts. In fact, if you follow us on Apple, Spotify, any of the podcast apps, in fact, you'll get the latest episode automatically. Sounds good, right? Thanks to my producers, Chris Reed and Jen Black. I'm Simon Bridges. I really appreciate you listening. Generally Famous is proudly brought to you by Trade Depot. Generally famous for low prices, always.